Hello everyone, welcome to Hands-on ICD-10 Coding Tutorial Session 7, How to Code Neoplasm, Part 3. This is the last part of neoplasm coding. First, I will give you a summary of this session. In Session 7, I will go through some of the neoplasm coding guidelines, and also we will code two coding examples. So please make sure you have the ICD-10 book so that you can follow along. The first coding guideline is about how to determine the principal diagnosis. If the treatment is for malignancy, designate the malignancy as the principal diagnosis. Principal diagnosis is the first diagnosis you list. There's an exception to this rule. If the patient admission or encounter is solely for administration of chemotherapy, immunotherapy, radiation therapy, you use Z51 as the principal diagnosis. For example, Z51.0, that's a code for encounter for anti-neoplastic radiation therapy. Use Z51.11, encounter for anti-neoplastic chemotherapy. And then Z51.12, that's the code for encounter for anti-neoplastic immunotherapy. The second guideline is about the treatment of a secondary site. When a patient is admitted because of a primary neoplasm with metastasis and the treatment is directed toward the secondary site only, the secondary neoplasm is designated as the principal diagnosis, even though the primary malignancy is still present. So the next two guidelines related to anemia. So when the anemia is associated with malignancy, and if the treatment is only for the anemia, so usually the reason for encounter is the primary code. But in this case, you code malignancy as the principal diagnosis, and then the anemia as the second code. So please remember, this is the out of the normal case, because normally you will code the reason for encounter as the principal diagnosis. But here, remember again, anemia, if the anemia is associated with the malignancy, you code a malignancy as the principal diagnosis, and then anemia code D63.0 as the secondary code. So when the anemia is the side effect of chemotherapy or immunotherapy, you actually code anemia as the principal code. So in this case, we use D64.81, anemia due to anti-neoplastic chemotherapy as the primary, the principal code. And then the neoplasm code will be the second code. But also we have to code a third code, which is adverse effect T45.1x5. You still need the seventh digit to have a full code. So this code is for adverse effect of anti-neoplastic and immunosuppressive drugs. So if the anemia is the side effect of radiation therapy, so similarly, we also code anemia code as the primary, the principal code, and the neoplasm code will be the second code, and also use the third code Y84.2. This is the code for radiology procedure and radiotherapy as the cause of abnormal reaction of the patient or of later complication, without mention of the misadventure at the time of the procedure. So if we code another neoplasm coding guidelines for the management of dehydration due to malignancy. If the admission or encounter is for management of dehydration due to malignancy, and only dehydration is treated. So in this case, the principal code is the dehydration code, and then the neoplasm code will be the second code. So this is normal. The reason for visit is always is usually the primary code, the principal code. For treatment of a complication caused by surgical procedure, if the admission or encounter is for the treatment of a complication caused by surgical procedure to remove malignant neoplasm, so you code the complication as the principal diagnosis code, and then the neoplasm code as the secondary code. For management of pain due to malignancy, if the admission or encounter is for the management of the pain due to malignancy, so you code the pain, neoplasm related pain as the principal code. That code is G89.3, and then neoplasm code will be the secondary code. But if the admission or encounter is for the treatment of a neoplasm, then you code the neoplasm code as the principal code, and the pain related to neoplasm will be the second code. So again, usually the reason for visit is the primary code, the principal code. You have to list it first and then list the other codes. For complete guideline, you can go to the website to make sure you have the current year and look for chapter 2, neoplasm. So I'll just show you how to get the coding guideline. Here on the website, you can go to ICD-10 CM menu, and then the last item, ICD-10 CM guideline. So click here. So this is for year 2019. So that's the most recent coding guideline. And you look for the neoplasm. So there's chapter specific coding guidelines, and then there's chapter 1, and here chapter 2, neoplasm. So this we went through basically first few guidelines. So when you get time, make sure you read through this code guideline for neoplasm. So it's page 29 to page 36. So it's just a dozen of pages. So make sure you understand the coding guideline for neoplasm. Let's go back to our slide. So next we will code a concrete coding example. A patient has fatigue and dizziness status post chemo for her pancreatic cancer. The physician diagnoses the patient with anemia caused by chemotherapy. So as the neoplasm code guideline says, if the anemia is caused by chemotherapy, then you have to code the chemotherapy related anemia as the principal code. So let's go to see that. Also, please make sure you bring your ICD-10 book out, so that now is time for the hands-on part of the tutorial. So the first code is the anemia related to chemotherapy. So let's go to the coding book. So let's go to the index to diseases. So this is pain. Oh, sorry, it's anemia. This is anemia. search for anemia. So we find the entry for anemia here, and then it's related to chemotherapy. So this is anemia, and then search for chemotherapy. Here. So we have anti-neoplastic chemotherapy. So this is the subterm. The main term is the anemia. So the code is D64.81. So make sure you read the coding notes. And also there's some coding notes here on the top. So we have got the first code for anemia caused by chemotherapy. So by the way, the other way is to code this is use the ICD-10 search. So you just search for anemia chemotherapy. Here, if you search directly, then you can immediately get the code D64.81. So you can go to the once you get the code, you can press the click this book sign to go to the tabular list to make sure you read the coding notes. Okay, we have the first code, and the second code is the pancreatic cancer. So let's go back again to the coding book. So go to ICD-10 CM, neoplasm. So we can click P here for pancreas. Okay, here the primary code is C25.9. So click this here, the code here, to go to the tabular list. So C25.9, malignant neoplasm of pancreas. So we've got the second code. The third code, as we have go through the coding guideline, we have to code the adverse effect of the anti-neoplastic drugs. So how to get that code? Let's go to the coding book. In the coding book, in the ICD-10 CM coding book, there's another table. It's called ICD-10 CM drug. So make sure you go to that section. So here we just click this ICD-10 CM drug, and then you search for anti-neoplastic. Here we have the adverse effect. So again, similar to the neoplasm table, we also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cases. So in this case, we have adverse effect and then anti-neoplastic. So the code is T45.1X5. So just click this code to go to the tabular list. So we see the 7th char sign here. So that means we need the 7th character. So just click the 7th char, and then we see this A for initial encounter, and D for subsequent encounter, and S for sequela. So in this case, our code is T45.1X5A. That's the code we need. So to summarize, we have 3 codes for this example. D64.81, anemia due to anti-neoplastic chemotherapy. And then second code is the C25.9, malignant neoplasm of pancreas, unspecified. And then third code is the T45.1X5A, adverse effect of anti-neoplastic and immunosuppressive drugs, initial encounter. So let's go to the second example. So a patient was treated for streptococcal sepsis 2 days after surgery for the removal of a malignant tumor of the lateral wall of the bladder. Since we have a complication of the surgery, so as we went through the code guideline, so we have to code the complication as the principal code. So the complication is sepsis. Let's go to the coding book. So go to ICD-10 disease and injuries. Sepsis started with S here. So sepsis. Sepsis here. Just click sepsis here, and then we have after procedure. So in this case, we see here is post procedural. So the code is T81.44. So let's click this code. This will link to the tabular list, T81.44. Sepsis following a procedure. That's the exactly code we want. Again, we see the seventh sign here. That means this code need a seventh character. Just click the seventh sign here. And again, the code we need is T81.44XA, initial encounter. So that's our third code. That's the first code, the complication. Let's go back to the example. And then also for this code, you can directly search. This is sepsis after procedure. You just type the keyword. So T81.44, we get the code very fast as before. So second, we'll code the streptococcal sepsis. So let's go to the coding book. Go to ICD-10 index to diseases, and then sepsis is again. Click S. Search for the strep. So the main term is the sepsis, and then the subterm is streptococcus. So the code is A40.9. Just click this code to the tabular list. So this is streptococcal sepsis, unspecified. That's the second code we need. So another way to get this code is to go to search ICD-10 CM code, and then you type sepsis. So here, streptococcal sepsis, A40.9. So just go to the tabular list. Make sure you read the coding notes for this code. So again, we get the second code. And then finally, we have to, let's go back to the example. We have to code the malignant tumor of the lateral wall of the bladder. So for this, it's pretty easy. We can go to the ICD-10 CM neoplasm. Here we have bladder. Click bladder, and then we have wall, and we have lateral wall. So the code is primary side as malignant. The code is C67.2. So this is called malignant neoplasm of lateral wall of bladder. So make sure we read the notes. So we get the three codes. So let's summarize. So if we have complication, we have to following a procedure to remove a tumor. So you have to first code the complication. That's T81.44XA. So it's sepsis following a procedure, initial encounter. So the A is the seventh character, means the initial encounter. And the second code is the streptococcal sepsis, unspecified, A40.9. And the third code is the neoplasm code, C67.2, malignant neoplasm of lateral wall of bladder. So we finished those two coding examples. I think this is the last part of the neoplasm coding. So thank you very much for watching.